pregnant woman slept on cardboard in the park until a billionaire stopped and saw her drawings. The thin, icy rain falling over the city that Tuesday night wasn't just water. It felt like a warning that the world had forgotten how to be kind. For someone watching from a warm apartment, the sound of rain on the window might be cozy, an invitation to sleep. But for Clara, every drop was a cold pinprick piercing what little dignity she had left. At 24, Clara carried the weight of a lifetime of loss on her shoulders, and in her belly, the weight of a new life stubbornly pushing forward, oblivious to the chaos outside. Her 8-month pregnant belly stretched the worn fabric of a blue cotton dress that had seen better days. She was sitting under the awning of an old, closed bookstore near the City Hall Plaza. The granite ground sucked the heat from her body, and she tried, in a painful contortion, to find a position that didn't ache her back and, at the same time, protected the baby. Clara's life hadn't always been like this. Until 6 months ago, she had a roof over her head. It was a small room in a crumbling brownstone, true, but it was hers. It smelled of freshly brewed coffee and cheap lavender. But the fire, that cursed fire caused by old wiring in her neighbor's unit, took everything. It took her mother's photos, her clothes, her security. And as if one disaster wasn't enough, the baby's father, upon learning they were homeless, vanished into thin air, leaving Clara with the promise of a love that never existed and a child who was already kicking for space. That night, the cold was a physical enemy. Clara shivered. Her teeth chattered uncontrollably. Beside her lay her only valuable possession, a stack of thick cardboard sheets she collected from the backs of appliance stores. To others, it was trash. To Clara, it was a bed and a canvas. She pulled a large piece of cardboard over her body. It wasn't just any cardboard. This one was special. On it, using a lump of charcoal found in an abandoned grill in the park, Clara had drawn. They weren't scribbles. They were firm, strong strokes, full of shadow and light. The drawing showed a lioness, her eyes fierce and weary, protecting her cub between her front paws. The drawn lioness seemed to roar at the world, daring anyone to touch her offspring. Clara used that drawing, her masterpiece, as a blanket, turning the drawn face downward to prevent it from smudging in the damp, trying to absorb the strength of that charcoal mother into herself. "Hold on, my love," she whispered to her belly, rubbing her chilled hands over the stretched skin. "Mommy will figure it out. God will provide a way." Across the street, reality seemed to mock the misery in the plaza. The lights of the Metropolitan Club shone brightly, and luxury cars queued up to drop off passengers dressed in expensive fabrics that cost more than Clara would earn in 10 years of honest work. Stepping out of this event was Gabriel, a man of 33, with the posture of one who carries the world on his shoulders, though not for lack of money. Gabriel was the heir to the Sterling Development Group, a massive real estate empire. Buildings, condo complexes, shopping malls. His surname was on half the deeds in the city. He was also the founder of a renowned contemporary art institute. Rich, influential, respected, and profoundly unhappy. The charity event he had just left had been a torment. Fake smiles, conversations about investments disguised as social concern, champagne flutes clinking while people discussed poverty as if it were an abstract concept, not a reality that bites. Gabriel felt suffocated. He dismissed his driver with an impatient wave of his hand. "You can go, Walter. I need to walk. I need air." "But it's raining, Mr. Gabriel," the driver cautioned, worried. "It's just water, Walter. It won't melt me. Go." Gabriel began walking aimlessly, but his feet knew the path of solitude. Since the death of his younger sister, Louisa, 2 years ago, the world had lost its color. Louisa was a promising visual artist, a vibrant soul who saw beauty where no one else did. But depression was a fog that slowly swallowed her, until she was gone, leaving Gabriel alone in a mausoleum of memories. The museum he had built in her honor was beautiful, technically perfect, but cold. It lacked life. It lacked the soul Louisa put into everything. He felt like a curator of ghosts. His irritation with the event and his longing for his sister led him to cut through the City Hall Plaza. The lighting was poor there, A street lamp flickered, casting a yellowish, faulty light on the wet benches and muddy puddles. That's when he saw it, or rather almost tripped over it. There was a huddled form under the bookstore's awning. Gabriel's instinct, trained by years of city life, was to look away. "Don't look, keep walking, you can't save everyone," was the mantra society taught. But something made him stop. The wind blew hard, lifting the edge of the cardboard covering the woman. The street lamp's light shone exactly on the drawing. Gabriel froze. His Italian leather shoes sank slightly into the mud, but he didn't notice. His eyes were fixed on the cardboard. The lioness, even drawn with crude charcoal on the uneven surface of brown cardboard. The image had an overwhelming power. The anatomy was perfect, the tension in the lioness's muscles, the protective gaze. This wasn't a casual sketch. This was technique, study, and above all, pure emotion. It was pain screamed in silence. Gabriel forgot the rain. He forgot his expensive suit. He approached, driven by a curiosity he hadn't felt in years. Clara woke up to the sound of footsteps stopping too close. Fear was an electric shock down her spine. She curled up, pulling the cardboard tighter, covering her belly and face, expecting the yell, the insult, or the "get out of here" she had heard so many times from guards and shop owners. "Don't hurt me, please." Her voice came out trembling, muffled by the cardboard. "I'm leaving now. I was just waiting for the rain to stop." Gabriel didn't yell. He did something Clara didn't expect. He crouched down. Right there, in the dirt, he lowered himself to her level. "I'm not going to hurt you." His voice was deep, but calm, unlike the voices of the STR. I saw the drawing." Clara lowered the cardboard slightly, revealing only her large, frightened eyes, surrounded by deep shadows. She saw a well-dressed man, wet from the rain, looking at the soiled cardboard as if it were a Da Vinci. "Who made this?" Gabriel asked, pointing to the lioness. "I did," Clara replied defensively. "It's just charcoal. I didn't steal anything." The cardboard was in the trash. Gabriel shook his head, ignoring the justification about the theft. "It's incredible. The anatomy, the expression. Did you study art?" Clara let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Life teaches you, mister. I've been drawing since I was a kid. Then I read books at the public library when they let me in. I copied the masters. Now I draw what I feel." Gabriel looked at her belly, prominent under the wet dress, and then back at the lioness protecting her cub. The connection between the art and the artist was so obvious it hurt. He felt a pang in his chest, a mix of shame for his own comfortable life and deep admiration for her resilience. He had to do something, not out of cheap charity, but because, for the first time in 2 years, he saw something true. "I want to buy it," Gabriel said. Clara blinked, confused. "What?" "The drawing, the cardboard, and I want to commission others." Clara recoiled, leaning her back against the cold wall. The streets had taught her that when a handout looks too generous, you check the fine print. And when a rich man offers money to a pregnant woman on the street in the middle of the night, the danger is usually great. "I'm not for sale, mister, and I don't want charity. If you want to help, just leave me alone." Gabriel realized his mistake. He raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "I apologize. I misspoke. I'm Gabriel. I own an art gallery. A museum, actually. I'm looking for exactly what you have. That truth. I don't want to give you charity. I want to give you a job." The word job hung in the humid air between them. Clara's baby kicked hard, as if listening to the conversation. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling hunger rumble in her stomach. She looked into Gabriel's eyes. They were sad eyes. There was no malice in them, nor that predatory glint she had learned to fear. There was an urgency, almost desperation. He seemed like someone who was drowning and had just found a lifeline. And strangely, the lifeline was her. "Work?" she repeated, her voice failing. "Work," Gabriel confirmed. "I have a studio at my house. It's an old greenhouse, it has good light. You can draw there. I'll pay for your time, your materials, and the works. And," He hesitated, looking at the increasing rain. "You can't stay here. Not in this condition. There's a guest room. Empty. Safe." It was an insane proposition, getting into a stranger's car. But staying there meant pneumonia, starvation, and the risk of losing the baby. Clara looked at the charcoal lioness. The lioness would do anything to save her cub. Anything. "If you try anything funny," she began, trying to sound threatening, though she didn't have the strength to fight a fly. "You have my word," Gabriel said solemnly. "And my staff lives in the house too. You won't be alone with me." Clara took a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill her lungs. "My name is Clara. Pleased to meet you, Clara. Let's get out of this rain." Gabriel took off his expensive cashmere blazer and placed it over Clara's shoulders. He didn't care that the fabric would be stained with charcoal smudges or mud. He helped her stand. Clara felt her legs tingle and dizziness set in, but Gabriel's firm arms supported her. A few minutes later, a black armored car, summoned by Gabriel's phone, pulled up to the curb. Clara got in, feeling the absurd contrast between the soft, heated leather seat and her soaked clothes. She left behind the puddle where she had nearly drowned in hopelessness, taking with her only her cardboards and a stranger's promise. The arrival at Gabriel's mansion was like crossing a portal into another universe. The house was immense, surrounded by high walls and gardens that looked like private forests. When they entered, the silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of Gabriel's shoes on the marble entryway. An older woman in an impeccable uniform appeared with an expression of shock at Clara's state, but a stern look from Gabriel was enough for her to assume a professional demeanor. "Martha, please prepare the blue room on the ground floor. Clara needs a hot shower, dry clothes, and a meal. Soup, something light but substantial. And call Dr. Evans. I want him here first thing tomorrow morning to examine the pregnancy." "Yes, Mr. Gabriel," Martha said, recovering her composure and looking at Clara with a mix of pity and curiosity. "Come with me, dear. We'll take care of you." That night, Clara slept in a bed that felt made of clouds. The hot shower had washed away the dirt of the street, but not the fear that all of this was a dream and she would wake up back in the plaza. She ate the soup ravenously, but shamefully under the watchful eye of Gabriel, who sat at the end of the table, just observing, as if confirming she was real. The following days were a slow adaptation. Clara was a wounded, skittish animal. She spent most of her time in her room or in the greenhouse that Gabriel had set up for her. He kept his promise. He bought the best papers, imported charcoals, paints, pencils. In the beginning, Gabriel kept his distance. He worked in his study, dealing with numbers and real estate contracts, but his mind was in the greenhouse. Slowly, the house's routine changed. The sterile smell of cleaning products, which once dominated the hallways, began to mix with the scent of graphite and fixative spray. Gabriel began visiting the greenhouse, first just to ask if she needed anything, then to watch her draw. He would sit silently on a wooden bench, observing how Clara's hands, marked by hard work and life on the street, danced over the paper. There was a contained violence in her strokes, a brutal honesty. She drew faces she had seen on the street. She drew longing. She drew fear. The trust between them was built not with grand speeches, but in the sharing of silences and vulnerabilities. One afternoon, a summer thunderstorm broke over the city. Thunder made the mansion windows vibrate. In the greenhouse, the sound of rain on the glass was deafening. Clara, who was concentrating on a sketch, froze. A flash of lightning illuminated the garden, and her mind was transported back to the night of the fire. The noise, the bright light, the smell of burning, which was really just the smell of ozone from the rain. She began to hyperventilate. She dropped the charcoal, covered her head with her hands, and huddled on the floor, babbling incoherently. Gabriel, who had just entered the greenhouse bringing tea, dropped the cup on the table and rushed to her. "Clara, Clara, what is it? Fire? The fire. I can't get out," she cried, trembling uncontrollably. Gabriel didn't call the nurse. He, the untouchable CEO, the man who hadn't hugged anyone in 2 years, sat down on the cold floor beside her. He didn't touch her immediately, respecting her space, but spoke in a firm, gentle voice. "There's no fire, Clara. It's just rain. You are safe. Look at me." Clara lifted her eyes, tear-filled and panicked. "I lost everything. I'm going to lose him too," she sobbed, holding her belly. "You won't. I won't let you," Gabriel promised, and for the first time he opened up. "I know what the fear of loss is like, Clara. I lost my sister, Louisa. I had all the money in the world, all the best doctors, and I couldn't save her from her sadness. I felt like the most useless man on earth." Clara slowly stopped sobbing, focusing on his pain, which seemed as great as hers. She liked to draw too?" Clara asked, her voice hoarse. "She loved it, but she stopped seeing colors. You draw the pain, but there is life in your drawings. Louisa lost her life before she died. I see her in you, but I see the strength she lacked." In that moment, the social barriers crumbled. They were not boss and employee. They were two survivors of different shipwrecks who had found an island in each other. Clara picked up a clean piece of paper. "Tell me what she was like, not the photo. Tell me how you saw her." Gabriel began to speak. He described his sister's crooked smile, the way she tied back her hair when she was concentrating, the light in her eyes when she saw a sunset. As he spoke, Clara drew. Her fingers flew, translating his words into an image. When she finished and turned the paper over, Gabriel caught his breath. The portrait was not a photographic copy. It was the essence of Louisa. Clara had captured the sweetness and the melancholy, his sister's soul. Gabriel took the drawing with trembling hands and, for the first time in 2 years, he cried. Not a cry of desperation, but of relief. It was as if Clara had brought a piece of his sister back to say a proper goodbye. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you," Clara replied, "for seeing me." From that day on, the mansion gained life. Gabriel smiled. He came home earlier from the office. Clara, nourished and receiving proper medical care, flourished. Her belly grew healthy, and her talent exploded. She began producing a series of large-format works, using cardboard and mixed media, elevating street art to a level of emotional sophistication Gabriel had never seen. The turning point happened 3 weeks before her due date. Gabriel organized an intimate dinner in the main dining room. The table was set with the finest silverware, but the mood was relaxed. "I have a proposal, Clara," Gabriel said, pouring juice for her. "More work?" She smiled. Her face was fuller, healthier, and her eyes sparkled. "The biggest exhibition this country has ever seen. I've decided to reopen the main wing of the museum. It's been closed since Louisa's death. I want your collection, Traces of Survival, to be the inaugural show." Clara froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. "Gabriel, I'm just a girl who slept in the park. They'll laugh at you. They'll say you've lost your mind. Let them talk. They haven't seen what I've seen." Gabriel pulled a leather folder from under the table. "And there's more. This is a contract. It formalizes you as the Institute's artist-in-residence. And it creates a trust fund for your baby. A percentage of all sales goes directly to his future. He will never, ever be cold or hungry, Clara. Never." Clara looked at the paper, the letters dancing before her tear-filled eyes. This was security. It was the future she hadn't dared to dream of. Gabriel reached across the table and held her hand. In a gesture of unprecedented and spontaneous intimacy, he moved his other hand and lightly touched Clara's belly, where the baby was moving. "We're going to take care of all this. Together. You gave me back my will to live, Clara. This is the least I can do." Clara felt the warmth of his hand. For the first time in years, she felt she could have a family. It wasn't the traditional fairy tale, but it was real. There was respect, admiration, and an affection that grew every day, filling the voids life had dug in both of them. "I accept," she said, squeezing his hand. They stayed there, smiling at each other, in the safety of that illuminated room, while the rain, outside, began to fall again. But now the rain didn't bring fear. They were connected, and one's life was irrevocably entwined with the other's. Everything seemed perfect. The path was set for success and happiness. But happiness, when it arrives too quickly for those who never had it, often awakens shadows that were lurking nearby. Gabriel didn't know it, but by bringing Clara into the light, he also attracted attention from those who didn't want to see that vagrant on the throne of his museum. And the peace of that night was about to be tested in a way no contract could foresee. Have you ever felt that, just when everything seems to be falling into place, life prepares a low blow? The connection between Gabriel and Clara is beautiful and fragile like charcoal on paper, but there are people who cannot stand to see others' happiness, especially when it breaks social rules. Envy is a silent storm brewing on the horizon of this story. What would you do in Clara's shoes? Would you fully trust this sudden change of life or keep one foot on the street? Leave your opinion here in the comments. I really want to know what you think. If you are rooting for them, like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the continuation. In the next act, a revelation from the past will put everything at risk, and Clara will have to make the most difficult decision of her life. The story continues. The calm that settled over Gabriel's mansion in the following weeks was something Clara had never imagined living. It seemed like one of those good dreams you wake up from angry at reality, but to her surprise, reality was still there when she opened her eyes. The high thread-count Egyptian cotton sheets, the smell of fresh coffee drifting up the stairs, the security of knowing no one would kick her out. Clara's belly grew visibly, and with it, a new woman grew too. She was no longer the cornered girl from the plaza. Fed, dressed with dignity, and most importantly, heard, Clara blossomed. The studio in the greenhouse became her sanctuary. Gabriel fulfilled every comma of his promise. He didn't just provide material, he provided respect. The news of the museum's reopening spread through high society like wildfire. Who is Gabriel's protege? They whispered in beauty salons and country clubs. They say he pulled her out of the gutter, others remarked, with that tone of contempt that barely disguises envy. But within the mansion walls, the outside world mattered little. Gabriel changed. That gray man, who seemed to carry a permanent rain cloud over his head, began to see the sun. He would come home from work and head straight to the greenhouse, loosening his tie on the way. He would sit in a corner and stay there, sometimes reading documents, but mostly just watching Clara work. There was a domestic peace between them, a comfortable silence that only exists between people who don't need to pretend to be what they are not. "You frown when you're shading," Gabriel commented one afternoon, laughing softly. Clara smiled without taking her eyes off the cardboard. "And you drum your fingers on your knee when you're worried about the stock market." They laughed. It was a light intimacy, without the pressure of romance, but with the depth of genuine affection. Gabriel learned to time Clara's practice contractions, learned to differentiate the baby's hungry cries, which he imagined, from colic cries, reading stacks of parenting books he had bought just in case. Clara, in turn, learned that the rich and powerful man was afraid of thunder and loved pumpkin pie, a simplicity that humanized the myth. However, as the old saying goes, a poor person's happiness is short-lived, and that of someone who dares to defy fate is even shorter. The harmony of that house was watched, and the watcher had a name, a surname, and an executive board position. Helena was not a wicked woman in the cartoonish sense. She was a practical, cold, and, above all, possessive woman. Administrative director of the museum and Gabriel's ex-fiancée, she always believed their breakup was just a pause, a necessary mourning period for Louise's death, and that eventually Gabriel would return to form and to her. Helena saw the museum and Gabriel's fortune as part of her own future. When Helena saw Clara for the first time, she didn't see an artist. She saw a problem. She saw an unqualified nobody, an opportunist using her pregnancy to soften the fragile heart of a lonely billionaire. "You are making a mistake, Gabriel," Helena said, in a meeting in the museum office, tapping her pen on the glass table. "Putting the Institute's reputation in the hands of an amateur, a homeless woman? The critics will tear us apart." "Her art speaks for itself, Helena," Gabriel countered, without lifting his eyes from the papers. "And her story will sell. The world likes comeback stories." The world likes pedigree, Gabriel, and she doesn't have it. The coldness with which Gabriel dismissed her that day ignited Helena's hatred. She realized it wasn't just a professional matter. Gabriel was emotionally invested. The way he spoke of Clara with a fierce protection was something Helena had never received, even when wearing an engagement ring. Driven by jealousy and the fear of losing her position of influence, Helena decided to act. She hired a private investigator. The instruction was simple: find dirt. If you don't find any, dig until you find the stench. And the detective found it. Or rather, he found a half-truth that, in the hands of a malicious person, becomes the worst kind of lie. Clara had a police record. For years earlier, still very young and naive, she dated a young man who turned out to be a delinquent. He shoplifted from an electronics store while Clara waited outside, unaware of his intentions. When the police arrived, they took both of them in. Clara was released hours later, her innocence proven, but the record of the detention existed. Helena took that paper and smiled. It wasn't enough to destroy Clara, but it was the perfect foundation to build a narrative. With the skill of someone who manipulates financial statements, Helena assembled a dossier. She mixed the old detention with fabricated testimonies from supposed neighbors at the old brownstone, suggesting Clara was part of a ring specializing in gold digger with a pregnancy plot schemes targeting rich men. The dossier painted Clara not as a survivor, but as a consummate actress, a predator who chose her victims carefully. The seed of malice was planted the week of the exhibition. The timing couldn't be worse. Gabriel was a wreck of nerves. The press was swarming. The critics were sharpening their knives, and he felt the weight of honoring his sister's memory. He slept poorly, ate little, and his patience was worn thin. It was on a Thursday afternoon, 3 days before the big night, that Helena entered Gabriel's study in the mansion. Clara was in the garden, enjoying the last of the afternoon sun, oblivious to the storm brewing inside. "I didn't want to show you this, Gabriel," Helena began, her voice strained with false concern. She placed the black folder on the mahogany desk. "But I am your friend before I am your director, and I can't watch you be played for a fool. Again." The mention of "again" was calculated. Helena knew Gabriel carried trauma from people who had approached him for money in the past. Gabriel opened the folder. Photos of Clara at the police station, still a girl, scared. Copies of police reports. The fabricated report about the ring. "What is this?" Gabriel's voice was dry. "The truth about your lioness, Gabriel. She wasn't in the park by chance. She was hunting, and you were the perfect prey. The sad, vulnerable millionaire. She studied you." Gabriel felt his stomach churn. His rational mind tried to fight. "The Clara I know isn't like this," he thought. But doubt is a quick poison. He looked at the photos, the documents with official stamps. Insecurity, that monster that lives deep inside all of us, whispered in his ear. It was too good to be true, wasn't it? Why would anyone love you? Someone so broken, if not for the money. He dismissed Helena, but the damage was done. When Clara entered the library later, bringing a new drawing to show him, she found Gabriel with his back turned, looking out the window, holding a glass of whiskey so tightly his knuckles were white. "Gabriel?" she called, sensing the tension in the air. "Look, I finished the sketch of the—" "Were you arrested, Clara?" The question cut the air like a whip. Clara stopped in the middle of the room. The smile died on her lips. The blood drained from her face. "What?" Gabriel turned around. His eyes, which in recent months had looked at her with tenderness, were now two wells of ice and suspicion. He tossed the folder onto the table. "An electronics store. 4 years ago. You and a guy named Marcus." Clara's heart hammered. The shame of that memory, the humiliation of being handcuffed when innocent, all rushed back. "Gabriel, I was 19. I didn't do anything. I was just with him. I didn't know. And the rest." Gabriel pointed to the papers, his voice rising a notch, trembling with contained anger. "They say here you do this for sport, that you look for vulnerable men, that this pregnancy might not even be." that this whole thing is theater. Clara felt as if she had been slapped. Not by Helena's lies, but by the fact that Gabriel was holding those papers as if they were gospel. He was believing them, or worse, he was doubting. "You think I'm a scammer?" Her voice came out as a thin, trembling thread. "After everything? After seeing me draw? Seeing me cry? Feeling my child kick your hand? You think this is theater?" Gabriel hesitated. For a second, he wanted to run to her and hug her, but the fear of being betrayed paralyzed him. He retreated into the safety of his rich man's armor. "I need proof, Clara. I can't. I have a legacy to protect. I have the museum. I need you to explain, point by point, every accusation in this dossier. Now." His bureaucratic coldness was the final straw. Clara, who had endured hunger, cold, and abandonment, could not bear the injustice coming from the man she had learned to care for. The wounded pride of one who has nothing but her own honor spoke loudest. She looked at Gabriel, and her eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. "If you need paper to know who I am, Gabriel, then you never truly saw me." She turned her back and walked out of the library. Gabriel did not go after her. He stood there, drinking his whiskey, telling himself he was being prudent, being rational. Little did he know he was making the biggest mistake of his life. That night, the mansion was silent. Gabriel had a business dinner with the museum board, an unavoidable obligation on the eve of the opening. He left without saying goodbye to Clara, hoping that when he returned, things would calm down and they could talk like adults. But Clara had no time for the logic of wealthy adults. She sensed the danger. If he believed she was a criminal, how long would it take for them to take her baby? Expensive lawyers, friendly judges. She knew how the world worked. The primal fear of losing her child consumed her. She went to her room. She didn't take the leather luggage Gabriel had bought. She grabbed her old backpack, the one that had survived the fire and the plaza. She packed 2 changes of clothes, her simplest drawing materials, and the little money she had saved from her allowance. She looked at the luxurious room one last time. She left the silk dresses, the discreet jewelry she had received as gifts, and the unlimited credit card on the bed. She took nothing that wasn't hers by right. Before leaving, she paused at the desk. She picked up a piece of paper and the charcoal. In 5 minutes, with a trembling hand and a broken heart, she drew. It wasn't a letter of explanation. It was an answer. She went down the service stairs, invisible as she had always been to the world, and slipped out the back door. The night was cold, but the rain had stopped. Clara walked to the gate, punched in the code she had seen the driver use, and stepped out onto the street. The icy wind hit her face, and she felt the weight of freedom and misery fall onto her shoulders again. She did not look back. Gabriel returned home close to midnight. The meeting had been hell. His mind was only on Clara. Guilt was already corroding his certainty. What if she's innocent? He wondered. I treated her like a suspicious employee, not like the woman who... He couldn't even finish the sentence. He ran up the stairs, loosening his tie, anxious to apologize, to tear up that cursed dossier. "Clara?" he called, opening her bedroom door. Silence answered. The bed was made, untouched. The closet, with doors open, showed the expensive clothes hanging like ghosts. "Clara!" he shouted, running to the bathroom, the greenhouse, the kitchen. No one. Martha, the housekeeper, appeared in a bathrobe, startled by the shouting. "Where is she, Mr. Gabriel?" I don't know, Martha. I thought she was sleeping." Gabriel returned to her room, panic rising in his throat. That's when he saw it. On the impeccable bedspread, there was a piece of paper. He approached. It was a drawing of him, but it wasn't Gabriel the businessman, cold and distant. It was the Gabriel who sat on the floor during the storm. The drawing captured a look of vulnerability and kindness he didn't even know he possessed. Clara had drawn him with a love so palpable it seemed to leap off the paper. In his drawn eyes, she had placed her own reflection. In the corner of the sheet, just one sentence written in her rounded handwriting. "Truth doesn't need defense. It needs eyes to see it. Take care of your heart." It is better than you think. Gabriel fell to his knees. The paper shook in his hands. That drawing couldn't be faked. No scammer would see his soul that way. Helena had lied. And he, in his arrogant cowardice, had fallen into the trap. "What have I done?" he whispered to the empty room. "My God, what have I done?" While Gabriel crumbled in his mansion, Clara was on a crowded bus, heading towards the outskirts, far from downtown, far from the plaza where he had found her, far from the shame of having believed in a fairy tale. She got off in a neighborhood she barely knew, guided only by a passenger's suggestion about a women's shelter. The place was precarious, smelling of mold and cheap disinfectant. There were no Egyptian cotton sheets, just metal bunk beds and the sound of coughing from other destitute women. Clara lay down on a thin mattress, clutching her backpack. The stress, the walking, the emotional pain, her body took its toll. Started with a sharp pain in her back. Then her belly hardened like a stone. These were not the practiced contractions Gabriel timed with a smile. It was pain. Real, rhythmic, urgent pain. "Not yet, my son. Not yet. It's too early." She groaned softly, trying not to wake the other women. She was 3 weeks early. But the baby, feeling his mother's desperation, wanted out. The pain increased. Clara felt a warm liquid run down her legs. Her water had broken. Here, in this strange place, without doctors, without the father, without Gabriel. Primitive, cornered animal fear took over. She tried to get up to ask for help, but a violent contraction doubled her over. She fell to her knees on the cold shelter floor, gasping. "Someone, help me." She managed to whisper, her voice lost in the darkness. Far away, Gabriel was on the phone, screaming at his head of security, ordering them to turn the city upside down. He got into his car and squealed the tires out of the driveway, driving aimlessly through the pre-dawn streets, looking at every shadow on the sidewalks, the image of the drawing burning in his mind. The rain began to fall again, thin and merciless, washing the city and hiding the tears of a man who had everything but had just lost the only thing that truly mattered. And somewhere in that vast, dark night, Clara gritted her teeth, alone, fighting for her son's life, while hope seemed to drain away along with the rainwater. Did you feel that wrench in your heart? It's hard to believe how pride and suspicion can destroy something so beautiful in a matter of seconds. Gabriel made a huge mistake by listening to the past and not the present, but who hasn't let fear speak louder than the heart? Now the situation is desperate. Clara is in premature labor, in a place without resources, and Gabriel is racing against time, but without knowing where to go. The burning question: will Gabriel's remorse be enough to save Clara and the baby, or will fate demand too high a price for this mistake? Leave a comment below. If you were Clara, would you forgive Gabriel after all this? I want to read your opinions. Don't forget to like the story and subscribe, because ACT3 will bring the conclusion to this drama. Get your tissues ready, because the ending promises to be unforgettable. See you then. The rain outside seemed to wash the city's soul, but it couldn't cleanse the despair flooding Gabriel's chest. Inside his sports car, engine running and his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles were white, he stared at the mansion gate opening onto the street's darkness. Where to go? The city was a concrete labyrinth, and he didn't have Ariadne's thread. His first reaction was fury, not against Clara, but against the blindness that had overcome him hours earlier. He grabbed his phone and dialed the number of the detective Helena had hired. The man answered on the third ring, his voice groggy. "I want the truth," Gabriel growled, skipping pleasantries. "And if you lie to me now, I guarantee you will never work in this city again." That dossier. What did Helena tell you to leave out? There was a silence on the other end, followed by the heavy sigh of someone caught. "Mr. Gabriel," Ms. Helena was very specific. She only requested what could be negatively interpreted. "The arrest," Gabriel insisted, speeding the car down the wet avenue. "Was she guilty?" "No, sir. The inquiry was closed the same day. The officer noted she was coerced by the boyfriend and tried to prevent the theft. There was even a letter of recommendation from a public school art teacher in the file, praising her conduct." Ms. Helena, Well, she had that part shredded. Gabriel hung up the phone and threw the device onto the passenger seat in disgust. Guilt hit him like a physical punch to the stomach. He had sacrificed the miracle he found for fear of being hurt again. Helena had manipulated his insecurities with the precision of a surgeon, but he had allowed it. He needed to find Clara. Not tomorrow, not after the storm. Now. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Clara's reality was made of pain and fear. On the cold shelter floor, surrounded by women carrying their own burdens, she felt life slipping away and, simultaneously, fighting to be born. The public service ambulance took forever. When the paramedics arrived, they found Clara pale, sweating cold, holding her belly with fierce protection. "She's losing a lot of fluid," shouted one of the shelter volunteers. "The baby is premature." Clara was placed on the gurney. The rocking of the ambulance and the screaming sirens seemed like a distant nightmare. In her mind, between waves of pain, she saw Gabriel's face. Not the man who had driven her away with his gaze, but the man who had sat on the floor with her. "Why?" she whispered to the vehicle's metal ceiling. "Why can't we be happy?" Gabriel activated his security team. Money, which hours earlier seemed useless to cure loneliness, now served to open doors. Within 20 minutes, he had 3 teams scouring the intake logs of public hospitals and maternity wards in the outskirts. The dawn advanced. The rain lessened, turning into a fine, sad gray eyes. "Zli." The car phone rang. It was the head of security. "Mr. Gabriel, we located an admission at the Eastside County General Hospital. A woman with no ID, brought from a shelter, in high-risk labor. The description matches." Gabriel didn't answer. He simply slammed the accelerator, ignoring red lights and caution, guided only by the protective instinct he had failed to exercise when it mattered most. Eastside County General was the opposite of the private clinic where Gabriel was born. The lobby was crowded, smelling of strong disinfectant and tired humanity. When Gabriel entered, his Italian suit now wrinkled and his face distraught, the contrast was immediate. He didn't ask permission. He demanded answers. The natural authority of one accustomed to commanding led the startled receptionist to point him toward the emergency obstetrics corridor. He found her on a gurney in the hallway, waiting for an opening in the surgical center. Clara was nearly unconscious, her hair stuck to her forehead with sweat, connected to a monitor that beeped a heart rate too fast for the baby and too weak for the mother. "Clara!" Gabriel ran to her, kneeling beside the gurney, ignoring the mud on his shoes and the curious stares. Clara opened her eyes with difficulty. Seeing Gabriel, she tried to pull back, a defensive reflex that broke his heart into 1,000 pieces. "No!" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Don't take him from me. I won't take anyone from you. Ever." Gabriel held her hand, kissing her cold, soot-stained fingers she hadn't had time to wash. "I am an idiot, Clara. A coward. I know the truth. I know you're innocent. Forgive me. For God's sake, forgive me." An exhausted resident physician approached with a clipboard. "Who are you, sir?" "She's going in for an emergency C-section now. Acute fetal distress. The cord is compressed." "I am the father," Gabriel said, with a firmness that allowed no contest. He looked at Clara, seeking permission. "I am the father of this family, and I will go with her." Clara, too weak to speak, looked deeply into his eyes. She saw the regret, she saw the fear, but above all, she saw the love she had drawn in the farewell note. With immense effort, she squeezed his hand back. It was the seal of peace. The fear of death made any resentment irrelevant. The next hour was a blur of white lights, beeping monitors, and silent prayers. Gabriel, dressed in surgical scrubs that were too short for him, held Clara's hand throughout the procedure. He saw the fear in the doctor's eyes when her blood pressure dropped dangerously. He felt the icy terror that, once again, life would take someone he loved away. "Stay with me, Clara. Stay with me," he repeated like a mantra, caressing her forehead. And then the sound. A sharp, strong, indignant cry broke the suspense of the surgical room. "It's a boy!" the doctor announced, holding the small but brave baby above the surgical field. Clara cried. Gabriel cried. And in that shared weeping, the final barrier between their worlds collapsed. There was no longer rich or poor, boss or employee. There was only life. Hours later, in a modest recovery room, far from the mansion's luxury, the real conversation happened. The baby, who was named Miguel, who was like God, a tribute to the divine protection Clara had always prayed for, slept in an acrylic bassinet beside the bed. Gabriel sat on a hard plastic chair, holding Clara's hand. "I fired Helena," he said, breaking the silence. "Not just from the museum, from my life. She will never get near us again." Clara looked at him, tired, but with a new light on her face. "It wasn't just her fault, Gabriel. You doubted." Gabriel lowered his head, accepting the blow. "I know. I let my past dictate my present. I was afraid of being used, and I ended up using my power to hurt you. I don't deserve for you to come back to that house." Clara was silent for a moment, watching her son's chest rise and fall. "The street taught me that pride doesn't fill your stomach or keep you warm in the cold, Gabriel. But it also taught me to recognize who is real. You made a terrible mistake, but you came. You are here in this uncomfortable chair when you could be in your palace." She squeezed his hand. "I won't come back as your protege, Gabriel, or as your employee." "Then as what?" he asked, apprehensive. "As your partner. If we are going to build a family, if you genuinely want to be Miguel's father, it has to be on equal footing. No secrets, no dossiers, no fear." Gabriel stood up and kissed her forehead with a reverence he had never dedicated to any socialite. "On equal footing, I promise." Clara's recovery was quick, driven by joy and security. The return to the mansion was not an act of charity, but a triumphant arrival. Miguel became the unofficial owner of the house, transforming the austere silence into baby giggles and cries. But there was one pending matter: the exhibition. Gabriel wanted to cancel it. He felt the world didn't deserve to see Clara's soul after what it had nearly cost them. But it was Clara who insisted. "My art was born from pain, Gabriel. Hiding it would be pretending the pain didn't exist. I want to show it. I want them to see." Epilogue. 6 months later, the solid oak doors of the Contemporary Art Institute opened. The line wrapped around the block. The city's elite was there, driven by curiosity and gossip, but also students, street artists personally invited by Clara, and ordinary people who had heard the story of the painter from the plaza. The main gallery was unrecognizable. There were no gilded rococo frames. The white walls supported raw, visceral works, charcoal on cardboard, paint mixed with dirt, portraits of invisible people who now, under the spotlights, forced society to look them in the eyes. In the center of the hall, protected by a bulletproof glass case, was the main piece. It was not for sale. It was the original piece of cardboard, the one that had covered Clara in the rain. The lioness and her cub. The watermarks from that night were still visible, the edges worn, the dirt from the sidewalk preserved as part of the composition. Below, a simple plaque read, "The Shelter Personal Family Collection." Gabriel circulated the room, not with the arrogance of an own, but with the pride of a witness. He carried Miguel in a carrier strapped to his chest, ignoring the astonished looks of the conservative matrons. Clara was radiant. She wore a simple terracotta silk gown that highlighted her skin. She spoke with a group of students, explaining how charcoal could be more expressive than oil paint. Helena was not there. It was rumored that she had moved out of the city after the scandal of her firing and the behind-the-scenes revelation of her unethical conduct. The poison she had distilled ended up isolating her, while her victims prospered. At the end of the evening, when the last guest left and the lights began to dim, Gabriel found Clara in front of the lioness piece. "It was a success," he said, wrapping an arm around her waist. Miguel was already sleeping soundly against his father's chest. "They liked the technique," Clara commented, resting her head on his shoulder. "But you know what really matters, don't you?" Gabriel looked at the battered cardboard, then at his sleeping son, and at the woman who had returned his vision of colors. I do. What matters is that we turned the rain into a shelter, and abandonment into a home. He turned to her and, right there, in the middle of the museum that had once been a cold mausoleum, he kissed her. A kiss without haste, sealing the pact of two castaways who, against all odds, built their own firm and secure island. The belief in a fresh start had finally conquered the cynicism of the world, and the cardboard lioness, now eternalized, seemed to smile, knowing her vigil had been worthwhile. It's impossible not to be moved by Clara's comeback and Gabriel's redemption. This story shows us that sometimes life needs to break us so we can be rebuilt in a stronger, truer form. Pride almost destroyed everything, but love and humility managed to save this family. And you, what did you think of Clara's decision to forgive and demand her place as an equal? Would you do the same, or do you think forgiveness has limits? If the story touched your heart, write the word restart here in the comments. I'd love to know you made it to the end of this journey with us. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to believe that even on the coldest, darkest nights, the sun always rises again. Until the next story.